Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Cabinet today, and welcome to anybody watching in online. I'm Peter Fox, Leader of the Council. I'll invite my Cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves.
Councillor Phil Murphy, I'm Cabinet Member for Resources.
Bob Greenland, Deputy Leader, Enterprise, Leisure and Culture.
Phil Hobson, Deputy Leader and Community Development.
Jeff Burrows, Cabinet Member for Social Care, Safeguarding and Health.
Thank you. Would opposition leaders like to introduce yourself?
Councillor Dimitri Petrini, Leader of the Labour Group.
Good afternoon, Cabinet and senior officers. Councillor Howarth from the Independent Group.
Thank you all. I've got a couple of apologies. Sadly, Councillor Hackett-Payne isn't feeling well today, and Councillor Brian Jones is having to chair the crematorium committee this afternoon. So just the five of us today. We're obviously joined by many officers. Can you please introduce yourselves if you have to take part in the debate, and welcome. And welcome to visitors in the gallery. Good to see you with us today. Okay, so we'll move then on to the agenda, and first off, apologies for absence, just confirm those. Councillor Hackett-Payne, Councillor Brian Jones. Any declarations of interest at this point, Cabinet, anything? Any other members in the chamber, any interest? No, okay, if you find one, as usual, declare it verbally and fill in your pro forma accordingly.
Leader, if I may, Robert Tranter, Monitoring Officer. There is a report regarding CMC Squared on the agenda, so both you and Councillor Greenland may want to consider whether or not you have interest to declare on that. You were both council appointments, so if you did, they would be, in my view, non-prejudicial.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was a member representative, but not a director. So I'm not sure if that applies to me, but I'll declare a personal non-prejudicial, and that doesn't affect anything to do with discussion or debate or voting. Okay, no, Bob, do you anything you want to say?
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks for that, Rob. Okay, so we'll go on to item 3, and there aren't any select reports to consider. So we'll go straight on into item 4. And the first major item is the payroll and human resources support restructure proposal. Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And the recommendation here is that Cabinet approve the proposed restructure, which will provide the payroll HR transactional service with some resilience and a modest developmental capacity, which is needed to deliver aspects of the People Services Work Programme linked to the whole organisation's development previously agreed by Council, and agreed to reserve fund the part-year cost of around £25,000 and recognise the full-year pressure of the revised structure in the 17-18 budget round. The rationale behind this is that the workload of the current payroll HR transactional service has grown substantially, and in addition to increasing demands linked to safer recruitment and increased activity linked to pensions, systems development and data protection, the service has seen experienced staff leave the organisation without being replaced, which, while the service was carried on, the pressure placed on staff is becoming unmanageable and unsustainable in the long term. Council have committed to a programme of work, part of which is aimed at improving the data and information available to assist managers to workforce plan and to develop our systems designed at improving efficiency and effectiveness. So, as mentioned, we have a situation where there's a considerable strain on a section that needs to assist with revised working practices, and this structure is essential to achieve that. The cost in the full year will be $58,000. The cost of the authority of not doing it, I would suggest, would be considerably greater. So it's a straightforward report, Leader. It's recognising where pressures are coming that aren't satisfactorily being dealt with, and taking measures to to remedy it.
Thank you, Phil. Tracy, anything you'd like to add?
Tracy Harry, Head of People and Information Governance. I don't need to add anything. Leader, I think Phil has captured it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Obviously, sometimes we see services straining, and at times we have to make an investment to make sure that they are sustainable going forward. So it seems an appropriate case that has been put before us. Colleagues, anybody wish to add? No? Dimitri?
If you look at all the kind of stress indicators of the staff in this council, you could definitely see that there's a lot of strain amongst the workforce, particularly the front line. So I actually support these proposals to give support to staff as and when they need them. I was just wondering, would this, relating to the schools who are moving away from HR service by this council and moving to like private companies, do we envisage our service being more capable now and maybe trying to coax the schools back into in-house rather than feeling they have to go to the private sector operators to get the service they want?
Tracy, do you want to pick up that?
I mean, clearly the service that we provide to schools is large. In terms of the 2 schools at the moment that have gone external for HR support, much of that support is on the strategic level and not the transactional level. This report covers much of the transactional arrangements supporting schools. Clearly there is an impact, but not sufficient not to warrant the restructured proposals that I'm putting forward. And in terms of, sorry Dimitri, in terms of the second part of your question, in terms of trying to retain schools with our in-house service, we've currently been doing some work in terms of reviewing the SLA with schools to look at how we can become more business-like in the future. But clearly it's up to individual governing bodies as to whether or not they remain with the local authority or whether or not they do go external for their HR support.
Thank you. Simon? Or Dimitri, do you want to come back in? Sorry.
Just sorry, out of interest, if more schools left us, I presume there's a financial impact, and that would that be additionally, would we incur like staff losses potentially if schools start en masse leaving us?
If the schools start leaving en masse, clearly we would review the current service provision to schools to see whether or not it's appropriate. As it stands, we currently subsidise the service that is provided to schools. So in terms of the SLA for HR services, we subsidise schools to the tune of a few £1,000s, and therefore, yeah, we would, possibly become more cost efficient internally if schools did go out.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Simon?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and I do welcome the report, and I think it's not before time, and I thank the officers for actually bringing this forward. I think the agenda for what we've got here is very important for this council in a way forward. I'd just like to ask one question on the issue of the payroll side of it. As we all know, we haven't got the numbers we used to have. Digital has taken over most things nowadays. It is probably easier to deliver payroll than anything else nowadays within establishments, because the foot soldiers who do that have a different direction in delivering it and should know how to do that nowadays. So I'd ask Tracy, is on the payroll side of it, with your scheme you have there, would you envisage that actually could be streamed down further once things have once the system has settled down again, because it's not as though it's something which should be difficult to carry out within this council or within many councils now. It's far easier, and that's the only one concern I have. The rest of the training, the health and safety side of it is so important. I think the Select has been asking for the staffing side of it, for the staff to be monitored, and the sickness, etc. of this council has increased substantially, so I do welcome this. But my question is, payroll, the graph you've got isn't showing any trainers in there, any apprenticeships. That is probably one of the directions I would like this council to go as well.
Okay, in terms of the payroll side of things, the additionality in terms of the structure is focusing predominantly on low-level payroll support, and in addition we've added in a pension specialist. At the moment, we don't have a pension specialist within the service, and that is becoming an increasing gap for the council. What we're finding is that the pension service are transferring more and more activity from themselves over to the council in terms of providing information and actually doing some of the work that the pension service used to do in the past. So that's where the additionality is around the payroll side of things. So we're not actually increasing payroll people per se.
May I just come in there? Our pension is run by Torvine, or are we in partnership with Torvine? I thought it was totally separate. I can't see why, if they administer it and do everything, why it's come back to this council to fund that.
In terms of some of the activity, it's providing information. What they're asking for is increasing demands to be totally specific in terms of the additionality. I'd have to go back to the service and come back to you, Councillor Howarth, but I'm very happy to do that.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Tracy. I think everybody's agreed that there is a need to put some additional capacity in here, albeit relatively modest. So I'll take us to the recommendations. I know Phil has already read them through, but I'll go through them again. Cabinet approved the proposed restructure outlined in Appendix 2, which will provide the payroll HR transactional service with some resilience and a modest development capacity, which is needed to deliver aspects of people service work programme linked to the whole organisational development previously agreed by Council, and that members agree to reserve fund the part year cost of 25,000 or thereabouts, depending on timing of implementation associated with implementing the recommended structure, and recognise the full year pressure of the revised structure in the 17-18 budget round. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the effectiveness now of council services, a quarter 2 update, and this is to provide Cabinet with the latest quarterly update on how the council is performing against a set of measures that are important when forming an opinion on the current effectiveness of the organisation. And the report reflects performance at quarter 2 in 2016-17 as part of our continued monitoring of performance. You'll see in Appendix 1 there is a screenshot of our dashboard which shows the progress against the various council's 4 priorities, and as agreed by Cabinet in September, the indicators on the dashboard have been revised to ensure that Cabinet remain focused on the most important performance issues of the council. Targets are set based on the priorities in the Partnership Administration's continuance agreement, and obviously our knowledge of the resources and that support each indicator. The report highlights where performance is being maintained or improved in 2016-17, and some areas where performance has not yet made sufficient improvement or is declining. Based on the information, there remains areas where focused activity through the rest of the year can improve performance. It's good to note that performance for all pupils at Key Stage 4 Level 2 threshold, including English and Maths, is 67%, an improvement, albeit quite modest, of 0.1%. But a more worrying issue is the free school meals attainment gap, which widened, and I think we can all agree that's something we don't want to see, and we want to see that gap closed, and looking forward to actions to do that. And that was discussed quite a lot at Council last week in Will's excellent report. The Social Services and Wellbeing Act came into force on the 6th of April, and that introduced with it a new suite of social care measures, and these new measures are also included in Appendix 2 along with the remaining indicators which are part of the national indicator set. Worth noting that the number of patients delayed in hospitals for social care reasons remains an important indicator. Last year we saw an increase in the number of delayed patients, although it was recognised by the Health Board that some of these delays were incorrectly identified as Monmouthshire residents. The average time taken to process a DFG, Disabled Facilities Grant, for the first 6 months of 2016 is still above the 15-16 average, but we are seeing heading in the right direction, and we're hopefully going to be making some announcements in the next budget which can do something more significantly to close that gap. Most indicators on enterprise and job creation continue to show positive trends. Employment amongst the economically active has continued to reduce, and the average wage has risen, albeit it is still relatively low. The provisional 16-17 Q2 performance data for waste shows that recycling is currently running at 70.3%, which is above our target of 66% and above the target of 2025 for Wales Government has set at 70%. So that's a good news stories on waste. I'm sure it'll go up and down over the years, but we are heading in the right direction. So on a finance perspective, at month 6, the net cost of services is reported at about 1.36% overspend, and a significant portion of that is within the social care and health area, which is, I know there's a lot of work going on to address that. Interesting to pick up the benefits of our new My Monmouthshire app, which is already given us extra data and really helpful things as well. So members, it's quite clear if we scroll down where the pressures are and where performance has slipped or where it has improved. And clearly, we do not underestimate that there is quite a lot of work to do in certain areas, and we are very mindful of that fact. I'm relatively pleased on the national performance indicators that it's not too bad a position, except for there is the one red block there on the percentage of final statements for special educational needs, which has declined slightly. So members, the data is there, and Richard is with us at the back, who will be giving you a deeper analysis, evaluation, I'm sure somebody will ask something. So colleagues, anybody wish to add? Richard, anything you need to add at the moment?
Richard Jones, Policy and Performance Officer, not on this stage, Leader. I think you've covered the main points.
Thank you. Dimitri.
I'll be trying to be short and concise, Leader. There's so much to talk about. First one is a quick query on electronic page 27. I think it's page 9 of the actual report. Average sickness per days per employee. Now, the target was higher than what we receive. The target is 10.8, but we're at 10.06. And it's a big tick and big green improved, but it's on the line. Why isn't that not marginal? Why? And then if you read the kind of supplementary information, it sort of recognizes that you expect it to go up and that there's been a lot of pressure. And I'm just wondering, does that sometimes possibly give a false impression? Disabled facilities grants, yeah, I've talked about this for a number of years. I know we've freezed the budget for this for the last 10 years. It's pleasing to know that Tories might do a U-turn on that and increase the budget to actually keep older people in their homes. That would be a most welcome response. The delayed social care and the Iron Bevan, so Iron Bevan designated some residents as not as Monmouthshire, but they weren't, right? So we expect it to improve. Would that be the assumption, right? Because it's such a critical thing, as we've had personal experience of my nan going through it, and it's a deeply upsetting time for people when they're stuck in hospital. So I'm looking for a level of reassurance, I suppose, on that, if I may. On the educational side, and in numbers terms, you're absolutely right, Leader, it's gone up by 0.1%. But I distinctly remember from the report that actually, in comparison to similar areas and compared to our demographic, we were slipping back. And I think that's what Estin were talking about last time. If I'm wrong on that, please let me know. But if we can have a more nuanced indicator of that, actually, when we're benchmarking stuff, because if Estin deem it important that we're we should be better because of our demographic rather than absolute numbers, if that makes sense. Should we not have a better indicator, not only for us, but for the cabinet as well? I was just thinking on that. That's my random thoughts.
Thank you. First of all, you talked of U-turns. U-turn says we've gone backwards. There is no U-turn here, Dimitri. That's a bit of political posturing on your behalf. What we've said last year, we were reviewing the DFGs. We recognise it needed to be inflated, and that will be done as part of this budget round, and indeed perhaps even working towards something before that. And Jeff, pick up some of the DTOC issue as well, I suppose, as well while you're on, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, as far as the DTOC is concerned, yes, you're quite right. There were issues in the last set of figures where there was some misunderstanding in the numbers, and they were incorrectly placed, which actually then gave an inflated figure as far as we were concerned, and which, as far as I'm concerned, was completely unacceptable. We don't ever expect to see absolutely none, because we talk about the real world and people. But for me, to see 6 over a 6-month period, for me, is normal working practice. It will happen from time to time, but I'm very proud of a very integrated set of working and community care to allow people to come out of hospital as soon as is necessary for them and when they're medically fit to leave. So for me, we're back to where we should be. Okay, thanks.
Can I ask, Will, do you want to reflect on the points on the education indicator?
Thank you. Will McLean, Interim Lead Children and People Directorate. We do report the absolute performance of our children at the end of Key Stage 4. And this year we did make progress, albeit not as significant as we would have hoped to have seen. Across all of Wales, we positioned at the moment as the 3rd highest performing authority. That has fallen back from last year when we were the top performing authority. The important point about correlation of similar schools relates to their benchmark position. And in the presentation that we discussed at full council last, you could see that we now have a school in each of the benchmark quartiles. That distribution is not what we'd like to see. We'd like to see many more schools above the median performance, clearly, and we'd like to see our schools in the top quartile. We report that in terms of the progress that we're making in terms of quartiles and so on in our improvement planning, and that's something which comes through the select route there. And if members so wish, then we could obviously look to amend that in terms of the scorecard that you receive for Cabinet.
Okay, thanks, Will. Simon?
Yes, I'd just like to take a moment with the overspend on the social care services, and it's something which has come to the forefront probably in the last 48 hours, especially in England, but it's been rumbling on for a while. I'd just like to ask the Cabinet member there, I know it's okay to say we're going to bring that in line and try and resolve where we are with that, and there is a picture in the report there of exactly where we seem to be not doing what we should be doing there. But I'd just like to ask the Cabinet member, the long term of this though, you as a Cabinet and we as a Council are going to have to actually look ahead of us. And I think the main thing for me on this, Jeff, is, Councillor Burrows, is the long-term future of where we go with care in the community, etc., has to be looked at, because it's okay to sit there now, but with ageing populations, with actually your LDP, with the way things are within the country at the moment, especially in Wales as well, are we funding it properly? Because it's okay to make the savings, but eventually that is going to strain where we may be 2.334 million in the next couple of years, because them resources put into that portfolio or them portfolios are not going to be enough. It's like a magic ball. You can see it there. It's going to burst, i.e. Neville Hall. Many complaints I have now with Monmouthshire residents having to go to Newport for care, for services. That is going to put a strain on this authority as well, because from Neville Hall to Newport back to this area, or back up to the Neville Hall area, because that's where they were being administrated from, there's going to be a massive strain. So the board, the health board, is looking for this authority to try and pick up some of the problems that they're envisaging. We know that the health board has major problems it ain't going to get any easier for them. So they're going to be coming to the councils and local authorities to try and address that. And it's okay for us to say, yes, we have overspent, or it's really difficult and people are working really hard, but we as a council are going to have to do more there, because the ball is telling us, the crystal ball, it ain't going to get any easier, it's going to get even worse. So my question to you, Jeff, Councillor Burrows, is long term, yes, we have a problem there, but we ain't going to address that with cuts, because the more we cut, the harder it's going to get. So I'll be asking you to actually increase and make a larger budget to take the agenda forward, because unless we do that, we have a massive problem as an authority. That's my quick question to you. Sorry, it's a bit long, but it's a simple question. Is the health board are struggling, the long term is going to be difficult, they're going to put it on us. How are we going to address it?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. My take on this is that we have had a very difficult journey for a very long time in this authority and in managing and eking out resources and ensuring that they're as best placed as possible to maintain good quality services for both adults and children alike. You will be well aware that over the last couple of years we've seen some pressures in children's services, and through change practice, finding better ways of using the services, we're actually turning that around and getting into a better place. With adult services, we know there is more predictability about demand than we get in children's services. You know, something can happen in a day as far as children's are concerned, but we do our best to manage through. We can plan more for adults, but you're quite right. There's an awful lot of pressure out there that, in spite of our ability to have a dialogue with the health authority, there's just so much that we can do and an awful lot that is beyond our remit, and it is down to continuing to work with these people to ensure that we provide as best service as we can. There are difficulties right now in adults, but we're getting some pressures there, but we're finding ways to manage that. And I can give you the assurance that whilst I'm here in this position, that we will be doing the very best we can to ensure that service provision is maintained for all of those clients in adults. And yes, there will be pressures ahead, but we will continue to proactively manage them through. There's going to be nobody left behind on this watch. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I think there is a need for a deeper conversation which is being had at Wales Government level about social services and health and integration and how we should move forward in the future. But I think... Oh, sorry, Claire.
Yeah, just to reflect what Jeff has said and to just give some insight really into some work that we're doing. The vexed question about funding social care and health in the face of the demographics, there seem to be report upon report upon report which is being published on a national UK basis and in Wales. And as the leader has just said, Welsh Government have just established a parliamentary inquiry into health and social care and futures in Wales. We've got a piece of work, a very detailed piece of work, which will be coming forward over the next while around the opportunities that there are and remain within adult social care against the backdrop of the excellent improvements that there have been in practice, but against the challenges that we face in terms of demand and the state of the social care market, because much social care provision is outside the council but commissioned by us, and we've got a key role in managing and shaping that market out there. There are still opportunities to be more efficient, but it needs to be effective as well as efficient, and that's the key point. And linking back to the question earlier around delayed transfer, you know, we've got to keep focusing on those outcomes, but we are looking at this in some depth. The opportunities are there, and we will be bringing forward those key recommendations about what this budget needs to look like into the future.
Thank you, Claire. And we are going to have growing pressure. You're quite right. We're going to have we have got a growing elderly population, and if we realign our budget, which we will no doubt have to do to match, we've got to make adjustments in other parts of the service as well, the council, which is going to be challenging. But I think this is where it's interesting. The Mark Drakeford agenda has stimulated a lot of thinking, because we are going to have to look at how do we work more regionally, perhaps, on some of these dilemmas, and how do we unlock potential in lots of areas as we move forward, if we want to provide sustainable services for a changing demographic for many years to come. The current picture won't fit. We'll have to do things differently going forward. So, colleagues, I'm going to move us to the recommendations. Nobody else on this one. So, the recommendations are then in 2.1 that Cabinet use this report to help their continuous monitoring and evaluation of the effectiveness of services and the extent to which they are contributing to the Council's priorities of education of children, supporting the vulnerable, enterprise and job creation, and maintaining locally accessible services, and that Cabinet use this report as an opportunity to identify any action they may need to be taken to drive improvement, ensuring the services are as effective and as efficient as possible in the context of the current resources. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next report, Council Tax Base for 17-18. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this is the report that comes before us at this time every year. As you know, it's a statutory calculation and decision. I think probably the best thing to do, leaders, for me to go through the recommendations are that in accord with the local authorities' calculation of tax-based Wales regulations 1995, no less, the amount calculated by Council as its tax base for 17-18 should be notified as 45,537.71 with a collection rate set at 99%. That no special resolution declaring drainage rates as special expenses be made, that any expense incurred by the Council in performing in part of its area a function performed elsewhere in its area by a community council shall not be treated as a special expense for the purposes of Section 35 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, and that council tax setting continues to be a function of the council, which we've always decided to do. I mean, I know it can be done at cabinet level, but it's always been thought appropriate that it remain a function of full council. It will be noted that the collection rate has been set at 99% in line with our current collections. We've been increasing this rate steadily over the years, but have been careful not to set it at an artificial level. Fortunately, council tax collection is holding up nicely. So we think it's appropriate to set that rate at 99%. So there we are, Leader. As I say, it's a statutory function. That's the figure that has come out of the calculation that needs to be done.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. I know Ruth, author, is here today. Anything you want to add, Ruth?
No, there isn't, Councillor. Councillor Murphy summed that up perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think there needs to be a lot of debate on this, but colleagues, anything? No? Dimitri?
I distinctly remember 3-4 years ago proposing 99%. So it's nice that finally we've got to the Labour position. It took a number of years, but we've finally got there. I was just wondering, in terms of the base calculation, moving from 98.5% to 99%, how much extra is included in the budget?
Yeah, that extra 0.5% in effect would give us an additional £270,000 of income for the year.
I think it's important to stress that the actual rate that we set has to be as close as possible to the actual amounts that we're collecting. If you set an artificial rate, you give yourself more problems than it's worth. So just sticking the rate up isn't the answer.
Simon?
A quick question. There was rumours that second homes, empty properties, may have a double whammy. Was that given thought, or has that been left at the moment? Because some authorities were looking at empty properties, instead of charging the full rate, above value charge, they were going to actually double it to encourage and enforce the owners to actually do something with that property. Was that ever thought about?
Well, that's got nothing to do with... Yeah, well, that would be a separate budget discussion. It wouldn't have an effect on it.
Won't have an effect.
There's no discussions going on.
Percentages, okay.
There's no discussions going on at the moment in that regard. I'm not saying that isn't the case across other parts of Wales in different run authorities. But, okay, so the recommendation, I'm not going to read out that again, but it's as Phil described there in 2.1 through to 2.3 or 2 to 2.4, and that we'll receive the council tax setting will be a function of full council. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to section 106 funding, the major GRIP 3 report. Brian Jones, if he'd have been here, would have presented this, so I'll talk to it briefly, but I'll invite Mike Moran at the back if needs be to give us some further detail. Can I welcome our visitors from MEGA, and can I take this opportunity to thank you for the work you've been doing on the MEGA station, and if you could take those thanks back to all of your group. You've worked massively hard on this to forward it, and it's getting traction and things are moving forward. So that's really positive. So members, this is to seek approval for the commissioning of part 1 and 2 of the Governance for Railway Investment Projects, known as GRIP 3 process, from the section 106 capital balances. You'll see, as part of the wider City Regions Transport Plan for South Wales, the possibility of establishing a walkway railway station at MEGA is being investigated. This project now features as a key priority in the Council's local transport plan, as we approved back in 26th of February in 2015, and is part of the Welsh Government's National Transport Finance Plan. The description, I'm not going to go through from 3.2 right the way through to 3.9 to explain how the GRIP process works, but I'll work us through the recommendations, and Mike, you can add some more detail around if it's not captured within the recommendations. So the recommendations are that the Council proceeds to commission parts 1 and 2 of the GRIP 3 process, which is a project known as 97362, for a new walkway station in MEGA at a total cost of 62,352, utilising funding from section 106 balances from the Greenmore Lane MEGA contribution of 32,346, plus financial contribution from MEGA and Undy Community Council of 10,000, and the Rail Future Fund 10,000, and the local MEGA Rail Group of £1,500. And to that 12,000 be added to budget code 797362 to meet the identified shortfall in funding for part 2 of the GRIP 3 process, and this contribution will include further estimated consultancy expenses of around £3,500, that these costs are funded by a corresponding contribution from section 106 balances held by the council from the MEGA West Kingfisher Rise development, and that should the Welsh Government agree to reimburse the funding for part or the whole of GRIP 3, then the funding identified, as I just read out in 2.1 above, will be reserved to support further stages of the GRIP process for the proposed new MEGA walkway station, without the need of reference back to Cabinet, and that the area of benefit for using the remaining balance of the off-site recreation funding from Kingfisher Rise, which is around £220,000, be defined as the administrative boundary of MEGA with Undy Community Council. Now, I hope that those recommendations are pretty comprehensive and give an insight right into it. But Mike, I'm going to invite you to talk further to this if you wish.
Thank you, Leader. I don't really have anything to add. I think you've summed it up very well. It's just to say that we commissioned parts or stages 1 and 2 of the GRIP 3 process earlier this year. This is about part 3 of the GRIP process. There are 8 stages in GRIP altogether, and like yourself, I won't go through them all today, but this is all leading very positively to hopefully the establishment of a new walkway station in MEGA. And as members will have noticed from the press release that was issued about a week ago, the group has actually submitted an application to the New Stations Fund for capital funding towards a new station, should we get to that stage. And the estimated cost is about £7 million for the new station. So that's a very important sort of piece of work that's already been done in conjunction with the local group. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, colleagues, any wish to add? Bob?
Yeah, can I first just add my thanks to the Mega Rail Group for the work they have done. It's been a huge benefit for the area to see people who have got such insight into this actually taking a lead and bringing this forward. But we know as well from the members, well, at this table and throughout the council, that this is a project which is very dear to all of our hearts, and certainly for people living in the south, it is a very important asset when it comes along, which I'm sure it will do. And I think this is a totally appropriate way to be using these 106 monies, because this will benefit so many people, not just actually in the south of the county, but actually I'm sure that people would be using this from all over the county. So I very warmly welcome this report.
Okay, Dimitri.
I also warmly welcome this report. I've had dealings with the Action Group for years and years and always supported it. And I was told by someone, actually, by doing this investment now, put you ahead of the game when you apply for funding for new stations, because you've shown you've done the work and you're ahead of other stations. And when you show that, you demonstrate that, you've got more chance of actually getting the funding for the train station. So completely support this proposal.
Simon?
Yeah, Councillor Taylor did contact me about this, and she totally wants to drive this forward with all the other user groups there. I'd just like to ask one question on the 106 monies. When they were agreed with the developers, legally and technically, they were agreed for these kinds of projects, were they? Because what I don't want to do is something happen here and then all of a sudden come and say, well, you actually haven't spent that on what you're supposed to spend it on, because that can occur. So as long as we're totally confident that is the case, that's great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Mike?
Yes, Ed, I think our interpretation of the way that we're spending the funding is in keeping with the intention of the 106 agreement, yes.
And obviously the Community Council have been consulted, and we're content with the recommendations that are laid down, especially 2.4, which would be one I'm sure they were anxious about. So we're okay on all of that. So recommendations, I read them out, so I'm not going to go through those again. Once again, thank you for the work that's happening there. And you know, it's a good example of where the social capital in our county, when it gets mobilised, can do stuff, sometimes a lot faster than we can. So well done. Okay, so the recommendations are as listed from 2.1 through to 2.4. All in favour? Thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, we'll move on to the Individual Support Service proposed implementation of revised contractual arrangements. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm happy to introduce this report to you today and thank Kerry York, the author of this piece of work, and who is here to take any specific questions you might have. As the largest employer in the county, we take our staff, their needs and concerns seriously. For example, that is why when the living wage was brought into being, we decided as a council against the national living wage as such and agreed on the higher level as suggested by the Living Wage Foundation, which is independently calculated each year and is based on what employees and their families need to live on. The difference between the two levels presently stands at an extra £1.25 an hour. So we did that voluntarily ourselves, and I'm not sure if there are any other authorities in Wales doing the same thing. We're not complacent, though, and we know that we can always do better. That is why our departments continue to review and adapt their staff terms and conditions. The report in front of you today is the culmination of such a review, which has taken just over 18 months to finesse. This is not for its own sake, but is to bring sustainability and improved employment arrangements for a skilled and valued team of 15 individuals who presently support 67 service users in our county. Whilst the staff to which the report refers initially did not have a confirmed contract with respect to their weekly hour totals, they did enjoy the equal benefits of their part-time and full-time counterparts proportionately. An analysis of work patterns over this period of time has enabled us to firm this up and be in a position to offer part-time, fixed-hour contracts commensurate with their needs, which I think is a very good thing, as it provides increased certainty for both employee and employer alike. Frankly, it's taken longer than we would have liked, but this is due primarily to limits on managerial resources that were able to be allocated to this particular exercise. The report is fiscally neutral, as you would expect, and I would like please to commend it to colleagues. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to see this before us. Thanks for the work that's been going on for some time. Kerry with us today. Kerry, anything you wish to add?
No, other than say we're really pleased that we've completed it, and it's been a good piece of work with the staff team and the trade unions. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks, Jeff, for just reminding us about the living wage foundation level that we adopt here in Monmouthshire. I hope that perhaps colleagues can go back to their own political groups and encourage other counties across Wales to adopt a similar stance, with very few do currently at the moment. But we welcome the content of the report, and I expect we may see others similar as work completes over future months. Okay, Cabinet, anything to add? Dimitri?
I really welcome this report after seeing our zero-hour contracts double in the last couple of years, and told that was people wanted them. This report sort of debunks that kind of argument in theory. So I really welcome this report. Moving to people to permanent contracts, giving them job security is most welcomed by the Labour Group.
Will you also take back the views to your Labour colleagues and other councils about adopting the living wage? That would be really useful as well. Simon?
I'm fine, thank you, Leader.
Right, the recommendation then in 2, the Cabinet approves the creation of the following posts at Band D and within the individual support service, and they're listed there. Okay, so all in favour of that recommendation? Yep, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the Monmouthshire Museums, the transition and forward plans. Councillor Greenland.
Thank you, Leader. Members will remember that fairly recently we approved the report on the alternative delivery model, but at that time we excluded the museum service from that report, and that was because we felt that we were not in a position to proceed with the museum service. More work needed to be done on the restructure, and this report sets out the work that is to be done and asks our approval to get on with it. And I think the most urgent of the recommendations is to agree the creation of a centralised service structure, including a new store for the artefacts. And that also will include a restructure for staff as well, but that it will be the subject of a further report in a few months' time. We're also being asked to approve the work needed in the construction of a new business plan for the service, taking it forward. The report isn't itself a long report, but we have 3 very informative appendices that cover it as well, and I think they give all the details that you would be probably wanting to know from it. But just to say that the museum service is a very valuable service, and it gives a valuable contribution to the life of this county, both for residents and visitors. And there's no doubt that the three towns with a museum presence are very protective of the service, and that we recognise. With a modernised service, we will still see a museum presence in each of these towns, but we would also look for a wider benefit across the county and for the use of the service more for our schools as well, widening that. So with that, I'll just open the report for debate, Leader.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks for bringing this before us, and thanks officers and others who've brought the report. I think that's the key message about us maintaining our cultural offer is so important, where we've seen so many these sort of services being eroded across parts of the country, and we recognise the value of what we have, but we've got to do it in a different way so we can preserve that offer and enhance it. So I welcome what's here today. Kath, is there anything you want to add at the moment?
Thank you, Leader. Nothing more at the moment other than to say thank you to Councillor Greenham for his presentation, and also just to say that this is the start of a long process, really. We have a 5-year plan in front of you, and we will be going through various consultations as the plan unfolds, so it's purely just the start of this today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kath. Okay, colleagues, anybody wish to add at this point? No? Dimitri?
I've read most of the report, actually. It's pretty good. Some of the logic is not, you can't argue with, really. My only query is looking at the approach from, is it Amiens, if I pronounce that correctly? Amiens Consulting, and looking what they actually did. I'm looking at their page 11 of their attraction strategy. I just look at those actions and what they actually did, and I just think, could we have not done that in-house? Was that inconceivable? You know, and I'm just wondering what did they bring to the, what did they bring? What did we pay the money for? Because looking at that approach, I just feel like that could have been done in-house.
When you're looking at a service like this, the really valuable insight is somebody with experience from elsewhere in the museum world, who can give an unbiased opinion of what we have here. And you can't do that in-house, frankly. So therefore, it is necessary to go out and to pick what you believe is the best advice that is available in the market. That's what we did in this case. The very fact that they might have come back with information that and recommendations that we might have made ourselves is actually confirming what we knew. But we would have been severely criticised if we'd made changes and then we did it without any consultation from outside. I know none of us like to pay consultation fees to outside bodies, but sometimes if we are to come to the right decisions, it is essential that we get an unbiased view of a service from outside.
Kath, anything you wish to add? No? Okay. Okay, Simon?
Yeah. I thought we'd actually agreed that I see the Economic Development Select have gone through this and had a queried the report. I thought we'd agreed actually we were going to start encompassing some of them select comments in the report to save us asking questions, because i.e. there's one on the Shire Hall there, and that's probably asked in the Economic Development. So I'm not going to go down that road again. Can we as Cabinet encourage officers and senior officers to make sure that actually questions which are put before these selects are actually brought into the reports? It will save a lot of time and will give us a good information and transparency of actually what queries were, because i.e. the Shire Hall, it's saying quite in the report, it's costing us a fortune, and it's not a museum, it's used as a visitor centre and all these things, and I'd like to see what the answers were to them questions, but I'm not going to ask them now because I keep you here all day.
The first thing to point out is that this report had to go out before the Select Committee, I think, met, or just about the same time anyway. But Kath Fallon was there at that meeting. Indeed, she presented the report at that meeting, and she is well aware of the comments that were made by the Select Committee, and all of those views will be incorporated as we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And anybody wants to look at and review that conversation, obviously it was live streamed, and you can check in of what the exact views that were shared there were. Okay, so the recommendation that Cabinet considers the findings and recommendations of Amiens Cultural Services Review, in particular the key recommendations associated with Monmouthshire Museums, and approves the Monmouthshire Museums 2017 to 22 forward plan and associated transition chart illustrating the phased approach to delivery. Approves the centralisation of the service to include a new centralised team structure, details to follow on that, and coordination of budgets and income generation opportunities. Revised and consistent all-day opening hours and the implementation of a lone working policy with associated safeguards. And finally, receives future submissions of individual business cases enabling full delivery of the forward plan. All in favour of those? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Kath. Right, on to the next report, and this is an apprentice update and CMC squared update. Bob.
Thanks again, Leader. And first of all, just to make sure that I've got it down properly, I am declaring a personal non-prejudicial interest as a director of CMC Squared. CMC Squared was set up as a community interest company to deliver community benefits which were outside of the scope of the council. Particularly, I have to say, in the light of the reducing funding available to the authority. And the original intention was that this company would be financed through a finance stream that would come from the photovoltaic roof panels and the government grants that were to be made available from them. But before we could implement that, had the company started, the government drastically reduced the grants for those panels. And so over the time, we have been looking for an income stream that would make this company independent of the council and able to carry on the community benefits for which it was designed. And if I have a regret, it's that we haven't been able to find that income stream. Nevertheless, during the life of the company, it has brought some real advantages for the county. And just to mention a few, Monmouthpedia. Monmouth was the first town in the world to be using the apps on phones that would enable tourists and others to look at whatever they were, QR codes, thank you, the QR code system, and they were then able in multiple languages to know the history of what they were looking at. That has now been copied many other places, but it was first done through Monmouthpedia. And it was something that the council frankly wouldn't have done. And given the time constraints, there had to be a quick decision to move into that. Otherwise, we would not have got Wikipedia to be sponsoring us on that. What we've also been able to achieve is the development of some applications, and particularly for better use within this council. And particularly worth mentioning are the social services apps of Flow and Plant, which are used every day now in the delivery of our social services by people working out there delivering those services. Previously, we had been buying in an app which, well, it was described to me as something which did 10% of what social services wanted to do, and 90% of it was wasted. And for that app, we were paying well over £100,000. In addition to that, we were paying maintenance costs of £90,000 a year. With the new system, it's around about £30,000 a year. And there were many more hidden and quite honestly unquantifiable advantages because of frontline staff using this app and having to spend much less time on administration and much more on customer care. In addition, the previous app required us to pay a fee of £60,000 per annum if users exceeded 100. Now we have unlimited numbers of users for no extra costs. We also retain the intellectual property rights of the app, and they are being valued at the moment, but at the moment you do not see the value of those anywhere in our accounts. Apart from the development of apps, the company was also responsible with Mellin Homes in the launch of Apprentice, that has provided over 100 youngsters, not only in Monmouthshire, but in the Greater Gwent area, with apprentice opportunities in the building industry. And that has led to over 100, well, actually it was 160, wasn't it? 160 apprentices, and these have led to 100 permanent jobs in the building industry. And what's more, the company has on its books a surplus of over £250,000. Again, I doubt that this council would have entered into this particular project on its own. It is something which a community interest company had at its heart. So I have no doubt that whilst there is a balance left on the account at the moment, that balance is far exceeded by all the advantages that have been, that the company has brought. And I want also just at this point to give our thanks as council and on behalf of the county really, to the 4 people who came forward and stood as non-executive directors. Each of them were very successful individuals in their own right, and they came forward and gave their time and considerable experience for no recompense at all for the benefit of the communities of Monmouthshire. So our thanks go out to them, and my thanks in particular for all 4 of them. And I do hope, and I've spoken to them, and I do know that they would be willing to help us again if the time arose. The company has been more or less dormant for a few months. It was kept in being because it was thought that it might be useful as part of the alternative delivery model. But now it has transpired that it isn't the right vehicle for that. Comes the time when we should look to dissolve the company, and that is what we are asking through this report for us to do, Leader.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks for just taking us through the benefits. Sometimes the benefits and what we've achieved, or the company achieved, can get forgotten. I think Apprentice is just a wonderful result of that joint working with Mellin, and we're very proud of what's that doing, of what it's doing. And I recognise as an outstanding account of 90,000, as the report highlights in 3.4. It's a shame that there isn't a way that we can recognise the saving, even though the report touches on it, the saving that their work is making for this council through its applications it's using, that they can't be somehow put to offset this debt. But I understand the rules, governance rules, and this debt and anything left on the account will be pursued. So happy to recommend and support the recommendations before us. It's a shame we've had to move to the dissolution of the company, but absolutely understand why. So, colleagues, anybody wish to add anything? No? Dimitri?
I welcome the solution of this failed company, and I'm really mortified that we lost £140,000.
How can you say failed?
Can I finish my? £140,000 of taxpayers' money. Can I ask a question? I don't know if I could hear Councillor Greenland.
Leader, this is complete political standing. We have said it is not a loss. I've pointed out the advantages that this has brought, which far outweigh the balance that is on that thing. And still we talk about failed company, lost public money, which is complete and utter nonsense. It does not stand up. And if we're going to hear the Leader of the Opposition, perhaps we can hear him with some facts rather than what he would like to be reporting. Thank you.
Pot 4.4. Whilst accumulated losses of 140k have been reported and funded by the council, it's in your own report. But my question was, in relation to what your words at the start of the diatribe, was is it patented? Is the technology of Flow, is it Flow stroke plan? I'm not sure. Is that the same program? I'm genuinely not sure. Is that patented? Have we got the patent in hand? Have we received it, or is it still pending?
It's not a matter of a patent. It's a matter of intellectual property rights, and we hold the intellectual property rights of the application.
I take it that you do welcome the work that the company set up with Apprentice, Dimitri. I'd hope so. It plays into the social agenda, which you purport to support. And I hope you recognise that the benefits is brought to the wider authority through those applications you just referenced. Simon.
Thank you, Lead. And I won't be as strong, and I will thank everybody being involved with this scheme and this venture. It was something new to the council all them years ago, and there was apprehension there, and as I know the last set of members, they've always scrutinised this because it's perhaps something that a council has never done before, as rightly said. So it was going to come under the microscope, as it is. It is a shame. Perhaps if we'd have looked at it a little bit differently and done things differently, it may have had a different direction and may still be viable to take this forward and find a new direction that we can put it in, but that isn't the case. So we are where we are. It is a shame to always wind things up and I won't say pull the plug on them, but there are things there still to come in. It does quite clearly say that there are valuations to be made on the commercial side of it. So I do welcome the forward thinking of this company. And that's all I can say really, Leader. Yes, sometimes it doesn't work, and yes, sometimes they do.
Let's just not lose sight. I mean, I know I'm labouring this, but let's not lose sight of the good work it has done. It's so frustrating where we see things rubbished when there is absolutely something to celebrate here and what it's done. And lots of you perhaps weren't around at the beginning when it was doing a lot of social good. And a lot of things which were happening there, and I can remember some of that. And I'm not going to just hear this work rubbished and what it's achieved. It's achieved a lot for young people across Gwent, including young people in Monmouthshire. It's achieved a great deal for the council, and I also share Bob's thanks, his sentiments of sharing thanks to those people who helped us in certainly the latter years of this, and all of the officers who put a lot of work into this. It's through these innovative approaches we can unlock opportunity, and this is what we need to do. Yes, sometimes things have to come to an end, and this is having to come to an end, and we recognise that. But let's not do down the good it's done just for some political gain. So, okay, I'm going to Jeff. You want to come in?
I just wanted to add an extra point about this issue regarding plant and flow. These are the two systems that were set up to look after processing for both adult and children's services, and being able to allow users, our staff, to actually for the first time input IT in a very efficient way, really for the first time. So whilst it may seem that the budget for actually setting this up has actually landed with this company, the value that it's bringing far outweighs what is actually being represented in that cost, and is daily providing savings that were otherwise being incurred in social services as a consequence of this work. This was a piece of work that was put together, and practitioners were used to set it up, and we've got ourselves a first-class IT system for social services now, which is the envy of others, is because we built it by ourselves, for ourselves, and is actually delivering what we expected it to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I'm going to go through the recommendations then. It's recommended that Cabinet receives a full update of the activities of Apprentice, approves the dissolution of CMC Squared, agrees to novate outstanding debt to the council for recovery purposes, and as a consequence of the above movements, agrees to formally pass ownership of Apprentice from CMC Squared to Monmouthshire County Council. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the last report of the day, and that's establishing a digital programme office. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this is another area where the current staffing won't be able to cope with the expectations that are being placed on them. The focus and concentration of resource and proficiency will train and equip staff to deliver efficient and effective services. And this will involve a restructure of existing posts, creation of 2 additional whole-time equivalents, realignment of digital posts across the council in order to create a focused capacity. And this will help generate greater customer impact and the integrated technology platforms that manage data needed to solve complex problems. An investment in essential software and hardware infrastructure that enables services to better respond to customer needs in as near to real time as possible. It will involve additional costs, 52,000 in payroll costs in 17-18, and an investment for this year of 20,500 reserve funded. And it will need to access a one-off sum of 100,000 from the ICT Transformation Reserve to enable the development of software that connects our customer service interfaces with the systems that support our core services and functions. This will allow services to be more responsive to customer needs, demands and expectations. And we will be needing to secure a further recurrent 50,000 from 17-18 onwards to provide the resource for ongoing server updates and essential maintenance within SRS as infrastructure and equipment progressively reaches the end of its useful life. So the challenge, Leader, is one of how to keep pace with constantly changing customer and community demands and expectations. This in order to maintain the relevance, viability and legitimacy of our services. Basically, we're in a position where we're expecting more and more and more of a few people. We need to expand this service. We need to get more resilience into it. We need to make sure that our ICT function is up to the pressures we're putting on it, and this restructure is intended to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. We know there's a lot of pressure in this area. We have Sian with us, author of the report. Sian, do you want to talk us through any further points Phil haven't covered?
I don't really want to repeat what's in the report or what Councillor Murphy said, but I would like to say that technology moves so fast, and we've already come a really long way. And when I look back 4 or 5 years when we used to have fixed PCs and we didn't have the ability to access systems and information unless we were sat in an office environment, and we had monolithic systems that didn't do the job. I quickly say we still got some of those systems, but things are changing. You've all been badgered to sign up for the cloud-based My Monmouthshire system. It lets our customers interact with us using mobile phones. It's the way that people expect to interact with us these days. Our road workers have developed their very own app to help them organise their routes and their workloads. We've got an excellent Microsoft product, SharePoint. You'll know it as the hub. And we've developed that product to manage and share our information. Microsoft themselves say that we are a really good example of how to use that system. And the current digital team have supported those examples, but they're just on the tip of the iceberg here. So to do more of this, we need the team to put the human touch into digital. We are very aware that people get scared and frightened by the word digital, and how that could change the way that people work. But we want to help our workforce to design digital systems, processes, that they're so simple to use that people wouldn't want to do it any other way. And I think that's the main reason why we were asking for this investment, because those very people, that tiny little team that sits in there are acting as the interface between the technology, the laptops and the equipment, and the actual business processes that go on that makes us a digitally enabled council. And I just wanted to reinforce that point particularly.
Sian, I'm glad you did. I think you captured that really well. I mean, this is such a growing area. It's just moving so fast, and the opportunities are so vast, not for just the organisation, for the public, and the expectation. You're quite right. The public are expecting us to do things in a different way, and we need to keep up. And I'm conscious that the pressure we're putting on our staff trying to manage all of that themselves is just too much to ask. So I do recognise that we need to really to put some investment in this so we can unlock far better things going forward. So yeah, thank you and thanks for the team for all they do. We've been really innovative in this authority, and that's down to key people who have made that and evolved that stuff and made it work and happen. So big thanks. I know we've got a couple at the back. So colleagues, any Bob?
Yeah, I'm thoroughly supporting this. Digital management and getting the maximum out of our digital abilities, how we best exploit this is absolutely vital as we move forward. We've got a ridiculously small team, really, both of whom have just walked in and sitting at the back, and they really cannot do more than they're doing at the moment. And if we are to exploit the digital opportunities that we have to go forward and do this. And I just thoroughly support this report.
Dimitri?
Sorry, I was just clarifying a point. It makes sense.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, you know my feelings on a way forward. We've got to live in the 21st century, and we've got to deliver. Who said they could fly aircraft with no pilots? That's going to happen. Who can drive cars? It's the way things are going. The only thing that upsets me with what we do have in Monmouthshire is not our problem. We haven't got 4G, we can't use mobile phones everywhere we go. The simple things we ain't getting right, but the hard things we're actually doing ourselves. So to Sian, just keep badgering them and making sure that actually we can, because it's all right to have these things, but actually if you haven't got the other things below them, these things don't work. So if you want to load an app and you haven't got 3G or 4G, you can't even get into your app. So Monmouthshire, we are way behind, but we need to actually push that as well, because these other things will not work fully without having that.
I think that's a sound point, real sound point, Simon. I think we're all keeping a foot on the pedal, trying to make that make those connections. Literally, we need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take the recommendations then. There's a few of them, so I think you covered them when you read it out. So I'm going to take the recommendations on block from 2.1 through to 2.4. All in favour of this? Yeah, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the cabinet. There is one. I won't wish you a happy Christmas yet, because we have one special cabinet before Christmas, I think on the 16th, where we're going to be looking at budget proposals. So thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon.